Now, I guarantee you, the number one question we're asked is, what's the point of Twitter? For most businesses, they sit there, shake their head, it's just 140 characters, really? No, it's useless for us. But just like I brought up the example before about the business who found out that they're being talked about on Twitter, same kind of situation applies to your business. And I love the statement I was told once in a business meeting. There was an office manager who just casually dismissed with a wave of her hand, "Well, I don't know anyone on Twitter." My answer was quite pointed in saying, that's the point. Get to know people, because those people on Twitter are more than likely already talking about things you want to be talking about. Are you going to turn away a customer from Topeka, Kansas? Are you going to turn away a customer from Boston? More than likely not. And if you can go through and use Twitter to listen to that interest community, listen to those people talking about your exact industry, those are the opportunities you can use to share a helpful article, to invite that discussion to go deeper. You had made the comment earlier saying, oh, they'll only talk about it if it's broken. Imagine the hero you become when you say, oh, that's a simple paper jam. Open this drawer, pull this handle, close it, and hit this button, and you should be right as rain. Look how much of a hero you've become to someone simply by listening and responding and being helpful. Looking at that same kind of copier example, you didn't say, hey, sign up for a maintenance agreement with us, then we'll come out and fix it. How quickly do you think they're going to be calling you? Not at all. But by simply offering that help, suddenly you've become a valuable resource. And that's probably one of the greatest powers Twitter has, is that ability to listen. How many of you have looked at Facebook, Twitter, or anything else and just shaking their head? I don't want to hear about someone's lousy lunch. But what if you're a restaurant owner? What if you were a coffee shop owner, hearing that someone got a lousy cup of coffee? Think of the different ways that simply listening gives you the ability to be helpful. And that's something that everyone says, well, Twitter's only really effective if you have thousands of followers and things like that. Nope. One of our clients is the Sturgeon Bay Visitor Center in Door County. While they only have several hundred followers on Twitter, a lot of those followers are news agencies. So when they put out information about a coming festival or a winter parade, those couple of hundred followers share it with their followers. And this is probably one of the greatest things Twitter has over Facebook, is that exact ability to share and push that engagement further. So when they put out an information, the holiday parade is November 19th, 10 a.m. That then gets picked up by the CBS and the Fox stations and shared out with all of their followers. Suddenly, those couple hundred followers are sharing it out to tens of thousands of people. And when you look at that same kind of one generation deep discussion from Facebook versus what you run into now with Twitter, where sure, you only have several hundred followers, but then you've shared it with someone else who has another couple hundred followers, and someone else who shared it who has tens of thousands of followers. All of a sudden now you have a geometrically larger audience. And that's exactly one of the things that, as you're looking at listening, responding and engaging with people on Twitter, especially from a business sense, that's where you're looking at saying, that's how my message gets larger. Probably one of the older expressions, you want your message to go viral? Well, Twitter's a built-in viral audience. Probably one thing that drives news services nuts is before they can even tell their anchors that a famous celebrity has died, there are probably millions of tweets already on the street about it. That you look at that kind of how that message gets spread. Is it necessarily who's saying the message? No, it's the message itself. Even Twitter in 140 characters needs to have good content. It needs to have that link so people can get that message, take that message even further. So just as the gentleman said, saying, well, putting a link on there, getting that message spread out, same thing with Twitter.
Mail needs your attention.
We all need attention. The same kind of thing that drives that people to take it to the next level is the same thing that carries it over in Twitter, that you want that link, you want that speed versus velocity to carry that message further. Jump back. Probably one of the more fun aspects of Twitter is it really allows your business to be conversational with your interest community. We look back at that example of Harley Davidson and Harley owners. The ability for, let's say, your company makes leather chaps for Harley riders. Leave the jokes at the door. But you look at how people will talk about going for a ride. You look at how people will talk about getting together at a convention and things. All of a sudden you have an audience participating in a conversation that you have the ability to join that conversation and start gaining recognition, building up that trust. Hey, yeah, they're a business, but you know what? They really understand what the riding culture is about. That social capital, that level of trust starts inching higher and higher. So when it comes to a situation where, hey, we just launched a new product, that level of trust is, hey, they understand what it's talking. Well, what kind of product did they come up with? That conversational tone, that level of trust has put your content into a favorable context. And as much as people want to joke about saying, oh, I had a lousy cup of coffee, if your business is selling coffee, those are conversations you want to be a part of. And the one great advantage Twitter has is this person's conversation and this person's conversation is all going on in a public space. Probably the most underutilized site in all of the internet is search.twitter.com. I challenge you to look at that site, and it's a search site, much like Google, but type into that search a topic you're interested in talking about and see what the results are. Those results stream real time. So you have the ability to show that you're listening, that you can respond, because even if this person is in Timbuktu and you're in Lake Geneva, you can respond and reply to their tweet. You don't have to make connections first. You don't have to be anyone. You want to tell Russell Crowe that, hey, I was filming in Plano, Illinois, and I took a ride all the way up to Lake Geneva, stayed next door at the Baker House. You want to tell them, hey, next time you're up here, come next door, have a cup of coffee. You can reach out and make that connection. Now, in the context of things, how much social capital and how much trust do you have in that realm where someone like Russell Crowe would actually read that tweet? Probably not a lot, but in that little joke of a example there, well, you showed that you knew where he was, you knew what he was doing for fun, you knew where he stayed. All of a sudden, it's put into a framework that might catch their attention. So as you're looking at that, maybe you don't need to apply it to A-list celebrities, but you turn around and look at that, hey, I'm targeting this particular client. They have a Twitter account. How much do you know about what's going on in their business? How much do you know what's going on in their lives? Are you finding a way to be helpful and show that you're listening? And as a last kind of comment on Twitter, again, I encourage your businesses to look at something like search.twitter.com. And that might be a fantastic way to gauge how useful Twitter can be for your business. The hot cup of coffee. Probably one of the longest existing social platforms is LinkedIn. It was around before Facebook, it was around before Twitter, but it originally started out as kind of a resume sharing platform. And to this day, most people look at LinkedIn and say, well, I'm not looking for a job, why do I need LinkedIn? Because it's evolved to be so much more. How many of you have heard of the kind of interesting game, 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon? That whole basis is the same concept that LinkedIn is based on. That 6 degrees of separation. That you take any two people in this world and that within 6 relationships, you'll find that they're connected. How many of you have LinkedIn accounts? Have you looked in that kind of far right-hand column to see how many total people you're connected to just within 3 degrees? It's a pretty impressive number. Now imagine if you were to carry that out to 3 more people. And you look at how we're all interconnected in relationships, and you look at LinkedIn and say, wow, that could be a pretty interesting platform. But LinkedIn decided to take it a few steps further. One of the greatest things LinkedIn can give you is exposure to something called LinkedIn Groups. And what Groups is all about is simply unorganized groups of individuals who said, okay, we're going to create this forum to talk about new real estate laws, advances in printing technology, changes in wiring specifications for networking. As strange as the topics can be, there are likely groups of people that are interested in already talking about them. And so LinkedIn gives you this wonderful forum to search and find out people on LinkedIn that are talking about things that are involved in your interest community. And you can sit back and say, well, aren't we looking for the same thing on Facebook? But here's a crucial difference. Specifically, when you're in a business-to-business, B2B environment, LinkedIn is very much a more professional platform. You're far more likely to be able to sit and have a group conversation with an executive or find that target client and participate in the same group than you would Facebook. I mean, admit it. If a potential vendor started dropping you messages on Facebook on your personal account, it'd feel a little creepy, wouldn't it? Hey, I got pictures of my kids on there. You don't need to see the little video of my kids singing happy birthday to my wife. You don't need to see that. But LinkedIn is that professional environment that you can have those conversations. You can make connections. You can look at and say, hey, Mike, you know that other guy over there? Can you hook me up with an invite? And suddenly you can use the network of people you already have to foster more communication. And with status updates, things like that, from the same instance, you can share very valuable information. You can participate in conversations in groups. But LinkedIn took it one step even further yet with something called answers. Well, if someone's got an answer, that naturally implies someone else asked a question. And probably one of the more interesting aspects, just as I encourage you to check out search.twitter.com, I'm also going to encourage you to check out LinkedIn Answers with a very specific mission in mind. Answer a question. But answer a question without selling. Because you look at one of the tenets that I talked about earlier from the standpoint of answer questions, offer a solution later. Someone has a question and you answer it. How many people are also asking that same question that just hasn't put that question on LinkedIn? Suddenly you're not answering just that person's question. You're answering the question of everybody else that has come along and wondered the same thing. You've been able to suddenly make that connection, demonstrated your value in a professional community. And so that's going to be something that as you look at these different platforms, I mean, LinkedIn really is probably, well, the redheaded stepchild of the social media community. Everyone knows it's there, but they don't really like to talk about it. But it harbors probably one of the greatest opportunities for businesses to connect with other businesses. And a lot of times we'll get the statement saying, social media, I just don't like to share information. In the end, it still comes back to that basic principle. This isn't about you. This is about your business's relationship. It's not necessarily about privacy. That's one of the other key advantages to LinkedIn, Twitter, and a business page is you can keep your personal side out of it. And that's probably getting into some of the larger questions of how do I separate personal from professional on social media, is as we look at these three platforms, that gives you the best opportunity to separate it. But as you're looking at LinkedIn, you can ask the question, well, LinkedIn's all about me personally answering questions. A few months ago, about a year now, LinkedIn opened up a fantastic new platform called Company Pages. If you want to organize all your employees who have LinkedIn profiles, contractors, vendors, what have you, you can create a company page on LinkedIn. That company page, like your LinkedIn profile, can be given a unique URL or a unique web address. And then you can have your key employees or team members listed there. You can talk about your products and services. You can even solicit and receive recommendations from customers or clients about specific products and services. Quick show of hands. How many of you have been on Yelp, TripAdvisor, or any of the other kind of review sites? All positive reviews? No. But you know what? How often, even with something like company LinkedIn profiles, things like that, those positive reviews aren't as helpful as negative reviews. Huh? Why do I want someone to have a negative review of my business? Negatives can be turned into positives really, really quickly. And while LinkedIn is a great platform for soliciting recommendations, it offers the question of saying, well, we don't want to be out there. What if someone says something bad? Well, if someone's going to say something bad, they're going to post it out there whether you like it or not. So what about TripAdvisor, Yelp, Google, Yahoo, all of these review sites? What do you do if someone puts something bad on there? One of the most fantastic things that all of these platforms have done is give you as business owners the ability to respond. We had an example of a veterinary clinic. Someone had posted a bad review of their services, and the owner was really, really upset, which is perfectly understandable. But the question then comes around and is asked, well, did you respond to it? You have the ability to go on to TripAdvisor, Yelp, say, I'm sorry you had a bad experience. What can I do to help? You think of that and say, well, the same thing can be said with any other negative comment that comes on social media. Demonstrate that you're listening. Whether someone puts something, a bad review on your Facebook site, someone kind of badmouths you on Twitter, someone says something nasty in a LinkedIn group. How often have you read a negative review, seen a response from a manager to see that not only was the business or organization listening, they showed that it was important enough to them for them to respond and look to make the situation right? How much weight does that carry with you now? So as you look at those kind of situations, you look at saying, even the negatives can be made a positive. And don't be afraid to engage on social media in fear of someone might say something bad about us. Well, you know what? If they say something bad about you, you listen, you respond, and you're helpful, all of a sudden that negative might become a pretty big positive to people following on and reading those reviews. Wow, this person had a bad experience. Oh, they responded. This must have been a fluke or something. If there's 5 positive reviews and 1 negative review, hey, everybody can have a bad day. And we all know that some people just live to be grumpy online.
People post the negative quicker than the positive.
Yes.
You responded to a negative and made it a positive.
Exactly. She made the comment that people are far quicker to post a negative comment than a positive one, but well, people sometimes with negative comments may wait if all of a sudden you're seeing that someone responded right away. One of the things looking at those negatives to positives is, just like you said, how many times are you going to tell someone bad something happened versus something versus a positive experience? So you can still turn those negatives into positives because, again, how frequently if someone posted something negative on Facebook, all their friends saw it, but if you're able to respond to it, it really becomes a powerful tool.